Greetings, Minecrafters, and welcome to another thrilling discussion, hopefully, on all things well being, another Minecraft discussion. My name is Dr. Kimberly Quinn, and I'm here to help people. It's just such a pleasure to help people become the boss of their brains, because thoughts come first and feelings come second, and then action or behavior last. So, therefore, by controlling our thinking, we literally can change the course of our lives. That is just the real deal right there. So today I'd like to have a discussion on how important it is to keep good company, because I think we sort of know that, somebody asked us, but we don't always, just like we, sort of clean a closet and, assess, what we want to keep in the attic and what we want to get rid of, or kind of like that. And I'm not saying get totally rid of, but sort of more like layers of an onion, which we're going to get into. Sometimes, there are certain people we get. I'm not even talking about extremely toxic, because that's more of a no-brainer. They just really kind of need to go if they're actually toxic, not just challenging. But a lot of times we just keep spending lots of time with people, spending our valuable life minutes, which we can never get back again, on relationships that are more out of obligation. And so that's the part that's like layers of an onion, because it doesn't mean we need to completely get rid of somebody. Um, though if it is so obligatory, and we're not really growing, enjoying, there's no spark. I don't even mean romantic spark. I mean just, you're excited, you look forward to having tea with them or something like that. If that isn't the case, most of the time, they may need to be like demoted to the second or third string. That's really what we're talking about here. And this is not meant to in any way to be negative. It's actually positive, because we only have so many life minutes in one day to use, right? Again, we've talked about this in relation to money, because that's the most tangible, something we can try to compare to, even though obviously life minutes are way out of the league of money. The point is that there's a limited amount, is the point. And really to spend these as if they were cash. So Richard Carlson, author of the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff series, talks about keeping good company also, and he says that most people acknowledge the fact that we are affected positively and negatively by the people we spend the most time around. Kids are affected by their parents and vice versa, and spouses are affected by one another, as are siblings. We are also affected by the people we work with and by our friends and neighbors. And then Richard, I feel like I should have lunch with this guy. I really like that. I have quite a list of people I'd like to have lunch with, actually. Richard Carlson is on my list. You know who's at the top? Is Oprah. I can't wait to meet her. I also can't wait to meet Brene Brown. And I would have loved to meet Wayne Dyer. I listen to him on the way into work frequently. Sadly, he's since passed. But and I also would have loved to have lunch with Robin Williams. I just thought I'd throw that out there. One of my all-time favorites. So on my list, uh, right now I have Oprah, Brene Brown, and Richard Carlson that I would really like to meet. So anyway, Richard talks about, there's sometimes you don't have control. We're locked into a baby shower or something like that. And because we do have obligations in life sometimes, and we're not saying to disregard, because I don't want to send the wrong message, because it is important to go out of our way for people. If we didn't do that, the world would, you know, be a very sad place very quickly. I mean, it's important to go out of our way for each other. Yet there's also balance, because we can also waste a lot of valuable life minutes with meaningless obligations. Just I even have talks with my Minecrafters when they first join a million clubs, and that's a good thing, because we really want them to get involved. That's how they have the best college experience. Though it's important, once you sign up for 4 million clubs, after you've kind of gotten a taste of each one, to trim the fat, and zoom in on the one or maybe two that really feeds your spirit. That's kind of what we're talking about. So there's obligation, and Richard talks about that. He says there are times, of course, when we have little or no control over who we spend time with. At work, for example. And then he says in these instances, it's often the case that we simply have to make the best of it. The same is sometimes true with certain family members. You spend time with them not only because you love them, but simply because they're family and you have no acceptable alternative. And this is also more true, obviously, when you're a child. You don't get a lot to say over, that uncle that keeps squeezing your cheeks endlessly, and you're like, ugh, or you know, getting you to answer, or the aunt getting you to answer her goofy knock knock jokes over and over, and you kind of have to put up with it when you're 10. But the difference is now, as a grown up, even a young adult grown up, you may still be locked in a little bit, but not like you did when you're 10. And once you're a seasoned grown up, there's this wonderful thing because we acquire voice and choice, which is great. And we can go through and clean out relationships, obligation type relationships, just like a closet or an attic. And I don't think people always realize that. And the reason is we often, we're not even talking about harmful relationships. We're just talking about boring, dry, white toast relationships that don't feed our spirit, don't do anything for us. And it's just really important to get that these can go, or at least be demoted to second or third string, because of our very limited life minutes. And Richard goes on to say, he said, there are other times, however, when we have absolute control over who we spend our time with. For example, our friends and people we invite into our home and talk with on the telephone. We have control over this. We have control what emails we respond to. Now, obviously, you can't really ignore your boss. You can ignore a lot of those reply alls. We can text less. So just like we've been talking about with the spectrum thing, most things in life are on the spectrum. There's not be in our life, not be in our life. There's the first string, second string, third string, and bench. And then we make the cuts for the toxics, because I'm talking about the extremes. We'll get into that eventually in a different episode. And then Richard basically gets into kind of what I've been talking about, the life minutes for years. He just speaks about it a little differently. It's funny because on campus now at Champlain, when in fact, our dean just said something because a student contacted her and he said, "Oh, what a great use of my life minutes." And she said, "I know who you've been talking to, because life minutes actually, I borrowed that from my rooftop friend, who was in my 7 days article." So Richard talks about something similar, that we've got a limited amount of life minutes in every day. I mean, that goes without saying. So he says, your time and energy are among your most precious and important assets. Therefore, it's extremely important to make wise and well thought out choices about who you spend your time with. Well said, Richard Carlson, preaching to the choir right there. And then he says, do you spend time with people who are truly nourishing you and your family, parentheses, or do you choose your or do you choose your company more randomly? I really hope not. Because here's the thing, when it's separated into a very simple, or separated in a simple way. There are two ways that we make our choices all day, either actively or passively. So if we're actively making choices, then we're living deliberately. That means we are sucking the marrow out of life, which is, of course, how I choose to live my life every day in every way. The other alternative is passively. So we make passive choices, passive decisions, not realizing it. We just spend money passively. We spend time with people passively. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking, kind of like Dorothy in the tower, the Wizard of Oz, and the Wicked Witch of the West, and those life minutes, like an hourglass, just sliding right through our fingertips when we're just doing these we'll say unnecessary obligations, because there are some that are necessary. Unnecessary obligations, spending time with the third string, we just don't need to do. And so when Richard asked this answer, he said, "Do you choose your do you choose your company, basically more deliberately based on how they're nourishing you and they're giving you a lift, helping you be your best self?" I'm paraphrasing him right now. Or is it just random? You just kind of passively make these choices and land in these situations with the second and third string. And then he says, if you're honest, you might be surprised by your answer. He says, perhaps you're friends with people without really knowing why, or out of laziness, perceived convenience, or simply habit. This is so important, because we can, just like every other way, we can be lazy, right? Not taking out the garbage for several days in a row, not mailing letters for several days in a row, not responding to whoever, and simply habit. simply just we're doing it because we think we should, because we haven't questioned it, and we just keep going and going. And just like any other habit, we just continue to do it because we're on autopilot. And, it really comes down to, sort of questioning, like, do I want to live my life on autopilot? That's a big old no for me. It's important, really, though, to ask ourselves that, because we tend to get wrapped up more so with relationships than I think other decisions, with the woulda, coulda, shouldas, and the doing things for reasons that really are not authentic. And then Richard goes on to say, he says, I'm not suggesting that you necessarily break off your friendships and form new ones, nor am I suggesting that all friendships based on tradition, obligation, or past experience are bad or wrong. I'm simply encouraging you to reevaluate and take an honest look at how you feel when you're with someone and shortly thereafter. This is so important because, and I've had this happen through my life, obviously, a fabulous 56, soon to be 57 next month. That again, it's not always deep and sometimes it is deep and terrible. Sometimes people start out as a good friend and they went a different direction or whatever, and it is deeper. But sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's really subtle, and you just don't have as much in common with people anymore. And they didn't do anything hurtful. They didn't, whatever. But you're just thinking, oh, Sunday I'm committed to, and like there goes 3 hours of my valuable life minutes. And remember that when we choose to change, to spend time with one person or a situation, we're sacrificing something on the other end, right? So we could be like, I'm enjoying this fabulous time in this hotel right now, sitting in this very nice living area in the suite, doing a podcast. And let's say, there was a choice to, meet up with a friend down here that I knew from a long time ago, but who I haven't really don't have a lot in common with. Like, why would I swap that on this lovely, rainy, raw day where I'm like in this quiet place, and having so much fun? Like, I don't think so. And it's so easy to get locked into that. And then it's important to reevaluate once we did cave in to spending time with this person. Again, wasn't an evil demon, but just didn't really do it for us. Making small talk for 3 hours when you could have been doing something else. Like, how did I feel after that? If you really pay attention to that, you might, and if you really didn't want to, and you were the third string or the bench of your relationship hierarchy, you might even be feeling a little bit of resentment because I just wasted 3 hours of my life minutes with someone based on obligation. And, again, we only get so many life minutes. So resentment's a heavy burden. We don't want that, right? We don't want, and there's no justified resentment. We're going to get into that next episode. But really, really think about, how do I feel after spending time with this person? Now, if it's the opposite of that, and you call up a person you haven't seen, because I'm down in Boston right now, and I got a lot of friends around here from St. Mike's. I called up somebody I haven't seen in years and loved every minute of spending, a spontaneous 2 hour lunch, and you're just, it's life giving and rejuvenating, and you can't wait to tell all your other friends that you spent time with this person. I mean, that's a whole different story. It's important, though, really to look at this. And, Richard goes on to say, he said, is this person you spent time with helping you to grow? Is he or she a person you admire and respect? Do you nourish one another? That is a key question right there. Do you share similar values? Also a key question. Do you feel good about the way you've spent your time in person or on the phone? If not, it doesn't mean you can't still be friends, only that you might want to make the decision to spend less time with this person, which will create the time and space to meet new people or to spend more time alone. This is important too, and it has me actually thinking of Aaron Doughty's thing with the law of subtraction. And he uses like the example of, if you want to invite newness into your life, whether it's a romantic relationship, new friendships, new job opportunity, travel, whatever, he uses the example of clothes, and he actually shows his very large walk-in closet. I don't know if it's his, actually, I shouldn't say that. A large walk-in closet packed with clothes, and he just uses this example because it's a good visual. If you want to invite new outfits, new wardrobes into your life, that isn't going to work if your closet's packed and there's no room for the new clothes. Well, the same is true with people. You can't invite new and exciting people who are more are sort of along the same vibration as you are, because we're all energy sources, right? Walk around having, spiritual energy, walking around in different outfits, having a human experience. You're not going to be able to invite people in the same energy field as you are, along the same spiritual path, if your closet's cluttered with people who are not on the same vibrational energy with you. I don't mean to judgmental, you're just in different places. But if your closet's packed with other people that are your second, third string in the bench, you're not going to be able to invite any, potentially new recruits for the first string, to be your starting players. It's just, logic, very, very simple logic. So it's so important to do like a spring cleaning on your relationships, and no one's talking about judging or being cruel and saying anything. You can just sort of gradually, ease out of some of these obligations to salvage some of your life minutes to spend with people you would rather spend them with. That's really what we're talking about.